looked to your right a minute ago, thought you saw the no linkage feature. Looking at the time.
Stop pontificating. Make a motion, let's rock and roll.
Y'all see my glasses?
Okay, the next item, excuse me. Hold on. You don't pound the gavel and then throw a bunch of M&Ms in your mouth. Next item is 14A, report from the Planning and Zoning Board. David?
Good evening, Mayor. I have our planning board report from our meeting on August 27th. I had 3 items on our agenda. Item 1 was public improvement variance, 2026 Matthews Mint Hill Road, request to modify connectivity requirements and maximum allowed length of a permanently dead-end street. Our board voted unanimously to recommend approval to the public improvement variance that would modify connectivity requirements and increase the allowed length of a permanently dead-end street. Our next item was zoning application 2019-697, R12 to RVS and OCD, office and residential, proposed at 2026 Matthews Mint Hill Road. Our board voted to recommend approval of zoning application 2019-697 as they found the request to be consistent with the Matthews land use plan. It allowed for the development of a multi-use site at a transitional location where office, residential, and institutional uses are located. The proposed zoning change creates a multi-use development that would create office space that is within walking distance of several neighborhoods, and the motion to recommend was approved by a vote of 6-1. Last item was the administrative amendment, the Crossing Shopping Center request for facade changes. Our board voted unanimously to approve the elevational facade changes for Planet Fitness. Approved changes included the expansion of the existing facade across the 2 tenant spaces, additional exterior finish insulation system over the existing split-face concrete masonry unit, and a change in the parapet height and updating the storefront. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, David. Any questions? Okay, thank you. So next item is 14B1, motion 2019-2. We have a memo from staff to defer this to the Planning and Zoning meeting on October 14th. Mr. Melton?
Motion, we defer action on motion 2019-2 until our planning and zoning meeting dated October 14th, 2019.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is public improvement variance, Harkey rezoning, and Jay Camp is going to review this with us as this was added to the agenda earlier this evening.
Yeah, and again, apologies from staff for not having this on the original agenda. This was part of the public hearing. It was on the zoning plans. It's been a requirement since we informed the applicant that the site plan did not meet code without these variances. So the first variance I want to talk a little bit about cul-de-sac length. We do have a cap of 400 feet in the RVS district. This site's a little over 600 feet. I think you're all familiar with the shape of the property and the relatively narrow aspect of it. So it does make the provision of any street connections or a street grid quite difficult. So that is a variance request that we think makes perfect sense given some of the site constraints. The second public improvement variance is for our connectivity index. This is one of the items that we added in the UDO about 5 years ago to really increase connectivity throughout the town street grid. For the RVS district, we have a 1.3 requirement. This is a one. The stated reason, again, is for the lack of undeveloped adjacent land to create stub connections to. As you're aware, the site's bordered by a neighborhood, an undisturbed buffer proposed at the back, and then Butler High School to the other side. And then I have attached to the memo here, this is the example of our connectivity index. So we do the measurement with linkages and nodes. So in this case, we really just have one linkage. So it's a one-to-one ratio. A development that's got connectivity is going to have these different nodes and links, and you do the essentially the measurement to come up with your connectivity index. Also here, just the code reference for maximum cul-de-sac. You can see here RVS, and that's 400 feet. So staff does recommend approval of the public improvement variance. Without the public improvement variance, the site plan is currently designed, cannot be voted on for approval. And I see we've got a few questions already.
Yes, Mr. Higdon?
I don't have a question. I'd like to make a motion. Somebody has a question, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the public improvement variances for the Harkey rezoning as detailed in J Camp September 9th, 2019 memo to the board.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions for Mr. Camp? Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is the zoning application 2019-697, Harkey property. We have a memo from staff with the information for the either approval or denial of this particular petition. Mr. Melton?
Mayor, I vote, make a motion in relation to application 2019-697, the Harkey property, 2026 Matthews Mint Hill Road. Motion we deny the petition as most currently amended is not approved, has been found to be inconsistent with the Matthews land use plan and not reasonable as it is the new development would create additional traffic and would permit office space in a predominantly single-family environment, and the rezoning creates new traffic in a congested neighborhood adjacent to a large high school and would allow for the development of offices next to a single-family development.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor of the denial, raise your hand. All those opposed? Motion carries 5-2 with Mayor Pro Tem Higdon and Commissioner Miller voting in opposition to the motion. Okay, the next motion is 2019-3, the Entertainment District. This is to amend the UDO to create the Entertainment District overlay that would apply to the same geographical boundaries of the Entertainment District Small Area Plan. Do we have a motion on this?
I'll be more than happy to make that a motion,
Okay,
that we approve the Entertainment District overlay and map as outlined in J Camp's memo dated September 4th, 2019.
Second.
Well, I have to finish here.
yeah, got a lot more to say.
Okay. The zoning action is, as currently amended, is approved and has been found to be consistent with the Matthews Land Use Plan and is reasonable as follows. The Matthews Land Use Plan, by creating an overlay district based upon the same principles and recommendations found within the ENT District Small Area Plan, and that it is reasonable as it creates the framework for the development of the ENT neighborhood. There you go.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any discussion on this motion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Last item is site plan approval. This is Hendrick Matthews. This is part of the zoning conditions that were made on this property when it was originally done. And Mary Jo?
Yes,
You're going
Mayor.
to give us background on this.
Yes, so staff received a request for an early grading permit on the site for, which was originally rezoned to what is called Hendrick Auto Mall. Before any grading permits or any permits could be issued for this property, there's a note in the conditions that said that site plan had to be approved by the town board. So this is what is, why it's brought to you. This is the rezoning area, which was considered Hendrick Auto Mall. Excuse me, it's getting late, I forgot the date. Back in 2007. As you can see by the current site plan, this is Independence Point. Here is the new McKee Road extension. It's called Marie Garris currently. This is CPCC Lane. These two portions here is where the applicant, Hendrick Automotive Group, would like to clear some trees, grade, remove dirt from their current sites that they're developing along Independence and Charlotte, and transport the dirt over here to these sites. So that is why they would need the grading permit to store the dirt over here. They have agreed with staff to leave 50-foot buffers of trees around Matthews Indian Trail Road here, and along these sides. Again, this is the original site plan that was approved by the board for the rezoning over there. And the red areas is what staff has drawn in as the proximate locations for where they want to do this site work. Again, they need a grading permit. Staff was not comfortable allowing that it had to come before the board. The other thing is we have not received a tree survey yet from the applicant. They are aware we've requested it. It is our understanding that the landscape manager, Ralph Ramser, was out there last week with their surveyor. There are a lot of large trees that would be removed. However, we have not received this survey. It will not be, we were told it would not be ready till this Friday. So,
Mr. Bell?
Thank you, Mayor. Mary Jo, how much would it impede or cause a delay in the project if we deferred any action until we receive that tree survey?
the applicants are here, and it's my understanding they're already transferring dirt to other locations. This is just a closer location for them to transfer dirt. And, we did advise them not having the tree survey was not a good set.
I'll wait until, see if anybody else has questions before I make a motion.
Okay, well, when you drive from Scott Clark Toyota up this road, it's got to be the most dense tree area on the property. I'd like to ask the petitioner if there's other options on the property to put that dirt where there's not such a large destruction of trees.
Okay. The applicant.
Hi, I'm Greg Hartley with EMH&T, the civil engineering surveying firm, 301 McCullough Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Gene Kochi, Hendrick Automotive Group, Vice President of Corporate Real Estate, 6000 Monroe Road, Charlotte.
So we do have some other options. What we've tried to do in this location is there's about 30, the reason we picked these two locations, one, they're closest to the Hall Road, which would be off of Independence, coming in and getting to those locations. There's about 30 to 35 feet of fall on these properties, so we're trying to more or less start to level those out is the reason we picked those locations. The other reason is Site A, so we have two different sites. The eastern portion is Site A. That is actually a little, it's more of a voluntary tree growth. It does have some smaller trees, but they're, a lot smaller in size, diameter of trees. The other side, Site B, we've had some discussions. if we can, we have a couple different sites we're hauling dirt to. We have a significant amount behind the Porsche dealership that we are moving out of there. It's about 140,000 yards of dirt, so we're taking some of that to North Lake, actually probably more than half of that. And then this part, the remainder would go across these pieces. So we could actually reduce it and do only the Site A, which is a lot smaller trees, still leave the buffers. You know, I do want to point out at least all the areas around these properties, except for the one portion on the south side, is actually Hendrick property and the public right-of-ways. So we don't have adjacent neighbors except for Scott Clark.
You said there's a Porsche dealership? Where's that located?
It's going behind, there's a new Porsche dealership. It's actually, we're building a new Jaguar Land Rover dealership just to the east of it. And the Hendrick Automotive Group purchased the Gar Church property behind that, which is about 30 acres. We're having to flatten out some of that area to be able to put a new building in that location.
Okay, so looking back in history, 2007, when we did all of this, Charlotte was going to close off Independence Boulevard.
That's correct.
And you guys had to find some place to build auto malls, and we really worked hard on all of this. And then Charlotte, suddenly, the light went on, and they realized that if they did that, they were going to lose a lot of revenue. And so they started putting curb cuts back on Independence.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, so let's go take the dirt and dump it out in Matthews. I mean, that's how it feels. I'm not blaming
Understood.
you. I'm just saying that's how it feels.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's hard to see an area that, you know, now is a path for people in Matthews to come out of Toyota. There's a lot of people that go there. They come up through those woods out to CPCC and back to John Street. So, you know, that's going to be a very noticeable change in that area, and not a positive change. So I'm really struggling with what is this doing for Matthews? Because we worked with you all years ago to make this happen because of what was going to happen with Independence, and now, you know, the tide's changed, and we're getting the brunt of the problem. So.
Yeah, I totally understand. Obviously, I wasn't involved in the original, but I was actually fortunate enough to do the Erickson rezoning when this one was going through. So I had a lot of fun doing that one. A lot of fun. We talked earlier about they wore their matching shirts and say no to Erickson, even the little kids. That was awesome. But anyway, we do understand there's been a lot of change. I think from our standpoint, we're looking at it as it's improving the value of the land. It makes it more developable for the Hendrick Automotive Group, or if they decide that there's some other use. Obviously, there's some discussion about light rail. One of the things that we did on the other property is we actually reserved right away for the light rail to come through the Gar Church property, which Hendrick has purchased. So we understand there's a lot of things that have changed over that. We've been working with NCDOT to kind of alleviate even more drive entrances along Independence. So I understand your concern. We're looking at it from a resource standpoint as, you know, we want to be able to maximize what we can do with that land in the future. One thing that we never know is what Mr. Hendrick's going to say he wants to build next. That's the key.
I understand. Mr. Urban?
Then there must have been some miswording going on, because it said fill dirt leveled on site to prepare building pads for future development. So I'm not sure, if you don't know what you're going to develop, you can't build a pad unless you're just going to go ahead and surcharge all the property and just be done with it. So I'm not sure that language was an accurate statement.
Well, we don't have a specific building pad yet, but what we're trying to do is create a sloped environment where we can level it off to build a maximum building pad for that lot.
Because I guess to my question is they stockpiled and panned up a berm when they did the Audi dealership, and that berm between it and the landfill, Martin Marietta, you can pan that puppy up 30 some odd feet and save a lot of room. So I guess my question is, the construction methodologies that there to just utilize Site A potentially and just go ahead, dump the loads, pan up that berm, and go ahead and kind of consolidate it. I think to the mayor's point is if we can do as minimal impact as possible, that would be greatly appreciated. So, you know, I'd rather not see you spreading it out as much as I'd rather see you stockpiling it. Is that an option?
It is an option. I think one of the things we looked at is, I'm not a big fan of having big mounds of dirt. I'd rather have a, you know, when we looked at this, if you grade-wise, so CPCC lane, the pad that we would build would be about, actually, I put some notes down here. So that intersection is roughly at 735. The pad on Site A, we have at 725. There's a tremendous amount of grade, so we'd be lower than CPCC lane, but yet on Matthews Indian Trail, we would be higher than that. What we're trying to do is create an area where you can come off of both streets and get into that building to make a drive from each location. We did the same thing on Site B, so we were trying to balance and not do a huge mound, so you can still hide it with trees and some plantings around the outside.
I'm just trying to think of the minimal impact, because what you're telling me, though, is that someone's kicking around an idea, because you wouldn't be mapping it out that way. If you were just trying to stockpile, you'd be stockpiling when you go
Yeah,
home.
and I think it's inefficient for us, because then we would end up moving that dirt twice. Eventually, Hendrick is probably going to build on this. We don't have a specific building or what's going to happen, but even if they would decide to sell, somebody's going to build on that. We're trying to provide a usable site. We're going to strip the topsoil, make sure there's good fill. We've already done some test pits to make sure the soil is good. Place that fill, and then all they have to do is knock off maybe the top 2 feet, spread it out evenly, and put a building pad there.
I mean, I get it. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
and there may be a Hindu church that's got 60-foot of grade issue there, and they might need to be benching in quite a few bits of dirt. And of course, you've got the new hospital. I mean, I'm sure that everybody's talked to everybody about who needs dirt, pushing and shoving it around.
We've been trying to sell this dirt for a while, and it's hard to get people to accept it.
Yes.
I mean, that's the problem. We'll gladly, if anybody needs dirt, we'll haul it.
Jaguar dirt.
Yes, it's expensive.
Any other questions?
Land Rover track.
Okay, do we have a motion of some sort?
I think Chris wants to make a motion, but I'd kind of like to see some more options sort of vetted here a little bit. I just hate to sort of see A and B get swallowed up in this whole equation. They've got all the points plotted in their computer, so they can run all sorts of models at this stage in the game, so I don't see any problem there, so I'll just shut up now.
You want a site, you want a tree survey or anything else?
I want to see some options. So you're going to go for the tree survey and some options?
Okay.
I want to see a tree survey.
Yeah,
So may I
I'll,
ask, may I ask another question? As far as your options, do you want to see something with mounding as far as, and maybe some more trees along the perimeter and mounding inside?
That would be my preference. No one complained about the mound behind the Audi dealership, and once the organics got mixed in there and it grew over, no one paid any attention to it.
Yeah.
It's still
Well,
there.
Yeah, and from our standpoint, we have a grading permit for the other site. We're doing a lot of the demolition work, pavement, buildings. We're going to be ready to move dirt
Right
very
away.
soon. Our North Lake permit hopefully will be in the next few weeks, and we'll be moving some dirt there. We could have those options probably in less than 2 weeks. We could give some options. I don't know what the time frame is, but the quicker the better for us.
You ain't
Could
going to
we-
get a tree survey in 2 weeks.
Would 2 weeks,
That's more than enough time.
okay.
To get a tree survey too.
The tree survey is already under
Okay.
contract. It should be complete this week.
All right, so
Mr. Melton.
I'll motion that we defer any action on the site plan for the Hendrick Matthews property as listed in Mary Jo's memo to us dated 9/4/2019. Defer any action on that item until our next meeting, September 23rd, 2019. And we ask the petitioner to come back with options other than those listed in the memo from Mary Jo, and to include a complete site tree survey.
Second?
Okay.
Got a comment?
Mr. Higgin?
I very much would prefer, since we don't know when construction may or may not take place, I would much rather see you mound the dirt and save the trees for now, because it may be a decade before it's built, and that'll be 10 more years our citizens can enjoy some nice tree cover. So that's my preference.
Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item is 15A, Cultural Diversity Committee. You have the draft minutes from that. Next item is consent agenda, items A through E1. And again, item E is to approve purchase of safety equipment as was discussed at the beginning of the meeting. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda items 16A through 16E1 with the approval substitution.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Unfinished business, item 17A, revitalization projects. Leif, how are you?
I'm good, Mr. Mayor. How are you doing this evening?
Good.
Thank you for having me again, Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners. I'm before you again tonight to, I appreciate your feedback over the last 2 weeks. We did compile your scores, and the memo tonight is slightly different than one Friday. We had some additional feedback that we incorporated today. But on the board up here is the rankings that we have, so we're asking tonight if you can provide some guidance on projects that we could move forward on, or if you have questions about the projects. Or
Mr. Miller.
Just a clarification, Life. 3.33, does that mean it's the highest?
Yes, sir.
And 8.67 means it's the lowest?
Yes, sir. What we did was take everyone's rankings 1 through 10. So,
Okay.
for instance, if everyone had voted 10, it would have had a 70, and average would have been 10. So,
Thank you.
exactly.
I was just a little bit confused whether it was the higher number or the lower number. Thank you.
I understand.
I think last time we had asked about the LED upgrade and how we might be able to trim that down, and then the wayfinding signs, you have a note there, we'll check on the warranty of those. I guess looking at the plantings and what needs to be done there, I understand that's the urgency that we have. Perhaps we can approve everything from the brick planters up and start moving forward on that.
That's a good idea.
I'm sorry. Let me pull up another one. This is the memo from last week. Those numbers did change slightly. I'm sorry.
With the 40% contingency and the increase?
Let's stick with the mayor's, while you're putting, let's just see the ranking, because I think the mayor was focused on plantings, which I don't think the numbers are going to change that much.
No, the only one that I think changed was the brick planters moved up.
So we'd go ahead and approve everything from
With the PowerPoint.
the retaining wall down to the brick planters in front of Town Hall.
Yeah, don't jump around yet.
You can just go to
Zero in on the list. Let me just make one of the quick comment.
Is this a
Life-
new list?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Life has prepared a little bit of presentation. It's 10:30, everybody's worn out, so you're cutting to the chase, that's good.
Yeah, I did keep the other slides just in case you had additional questions about these projects, but this is the bulk of it here. If we wanted to look at any of the projects specifically, we can go down to those.
Okay. Okay, we had questions about wayfinding. We had questions about the LED, and now this is all messed up, so.
How could it change that much? Did we just have one person change their vote?
It was one additional.
And it made that much of a difference? It doesn't seem like it's even, unless they
That
had
person must be-
diametrically opposed to everybody else, because it seems pretty.
That person's an outlier.
I proved everything. No, but the numbers are not really changing, I mean.
Well, Public Art was in last place, and now it's in
Yeah.
seventh or whatever, and it remains 10th for me. I mean,
Can we, regardless of what that says, there's not that, may have the floor.
Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Regardless of what that says, it sounded for about 8.2 seconds that we had consensus on your original idea.
Exactly.
So go back and grab those items.
Yeah,
and
can we
plug
go
them in.
back to the original list when Chris didn't turn his homework in on time? To the main.
Yes.
Everything
Go back
from
to that.
667 up.
Go ahead and tonight approve that.
Yes, so.
We need some more explanation on the LED upgrade
Right.
and resurfacing Matthews Station Street. I think we need some more details on that. There are, I guess my feeling on Matthews Station Street is there's some lining that needs to be done and maybe crosswalk work, but I'm not sure we have to resurface that whole street. But, you know, we can talk through that. And then the wayfinding signs, I think, Chris, you had a question about the warranty on those.
I did, and a question on the wayfinding signs in and of themselves. How much do people use wayfinding signs to get around anymore? I mean, they were a great concept 8-10 years ago when Buzz was in here pitching all the marketing and branding stuff for the town, but with Waze, with Apple Maps, with navigation, do people really use and put value in wayfinding signs?
I think they do.
It's part of making, placemaking.
Okay,
Otherwise, you just.
all right.
I think they're useful, but I think they're also grossly overpriced.
And I gotta think, I gotta think the warranty on the powder coat or paint on those things was more than 8 years.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so
Okay.
if no one else has anything, I'll motion that we approve items on Life's memo to us dated 9/6/2019 from brick planters in front of Town Hall up through replace retaining wall implants only.
Do you have a second on that?
A second.
You
Okay.
got a comment?
Mr. Higdon?
The item that's ranked 6.17, so that means we're going to build the sidewalk and go buy land and all that stuff? So I don't favor that.
You're talking about the retaining wall? or-
Yes.
It's on there twice.
Well, I'm in favor of replacing the retaining wall, not buying property and building a sidewalk on top, because I think it was Commissioner Miller that said there's a sidewalk on the other side of the street already, and I don't see a lot of value.
I like the terracing and the, what do you call it?
I just don't like buying the property there.
Well, this project estimate is simply replacing the retaining wall, right?
No, but there's
The-
two
the
items
one
here.
down
The
right
first one, and then
above
the
the
one
brick
that says
planters.
6.17 says additional amenities, which I assume was the sidewalk at the top.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
I
It was the-
I'm not in favor of that.
The sidewalk's not a deal breaker for me, but I would like the terracing to where we can have people sit out there and overlook the town green.
In order to do the terracing, we would probably have to purchase additional property on the top side. Once we build the wall terrace, it would be very limited for space. And
Have we had that conversation with Jeff Fuller over there about that? I mean, it would be an improvement to his property. Would he be willing to grant an easement or do something from that aspect of it? Because that's just one piece of the puzzle to get something completed that doesn't have to be addressed down the road.
when I spoke to him, it was just about terracing the wall. And then when I came to the board mentioned the project from, I think it was 2006. And that's where the additional amenities came up. And that's why it was added separately. So we would look at just the terracing or terracing it with the additional amenities on top. Not 2006. I don't remember what year it was now.
I'm not sure I understand. Maybe I'm missing something.
Chris, you want to turn on your?
Turn on your mic and,
Are you saying that you have talked to him and he wants to sell that piece of property?
I talked to him about replacing the wall and terracing, and that we would be clearing the trees from the top and just
But
discuss
buying
some.
it-
I did not discuss buying property, no, sir.
That's the part I've got a concern with, because I think that, maybe John, that's what I think John's talking about. That, depending on how much we take there, could have a big bearing on what happens to the rest of his piece of property. And I wouldn't want to even start talking about that until we had discussed it with him and find out kind of what he's got plans in the long run on that too, because that could really, on setbacks and all, it could be a major concern.
Do we have a survey of that?
I don't, there may be a survey.
It'd be nice to have a survey. Don't want to be digging on somebody else's property. You have to get a construction easement
I see what you're
regardless.
talking- Well, you're talking about
The
I
retaining
think
wall.
we got a survey on 3.33, but if you go down to 6.17, I think we got a different. My suggestion would be maybe that staff reaches out to him, hear what his thoughts are. I mean, I certainly don't want to disrupt his plans, but it is an interesting opportunity if we were to be able to create more placemaking on the other side of the street. So you're kind of expanding the square a little bit, like there's more places for people to sit, let's say when we're lighting a Christmas tree or something like that. Maybe it'll expand the park, but he may want a bunch of money, or it may impact his ability to develop, a two-story building on the other side, and I'm sure we don't want to disrupt that because that's a valuable piece of kind of the downtown.
Mr. Miller?
I would suggest that we strike the 6.17 purchase of the land from the plans until we negotiate or discuss it with him. He will benefit, as Commissioner Urban said, but if we do brick planters, skip 6.17, go to 583 and up above, that would be fine for an amended motion, I think.
Mr. Melton, would you amend your motion to reflect that?
I will.
Mr. Query, would you amend, no. Ms. Dement, would you amend your second?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Query?
I want to talk about the land some more. And because we almost had the same thing across the street when we wanted to put a sidewalk over there in front of the Funderburk property. And we told her we was going to take that property. Now, maybe all the board don't know about that, but that's kind of where it went down to. We had a meeting, found out that we could allow it to where what we had to have for the sidewalk we would let it not impact her property as far as setbacks and all. So when we start talking about somebody's property, I think we need to be a little more specific about what we're talking about, not just throw it around.
Mr. Higdon?
Just another comment, if we include the first one, 3.33, that kind of precludes, I would think, any other options of terracing or whatever, if you're gonna, or we build a retaining wall and then we're gonna tear it down and then build terrace a little bit later, so I think you'd have to also strike the first one until we decide what we're gonna do.
Yeah, probably.
Or not, I'm fine with just building a retaining wall, but I'm just bringing that to the attention that if we build it, we're not gonna tear it down and build something else, like the roundabout. The DOT's doing.
It will get torn down. It will get torn out.
It's got to be torn out.
Can we just remove the retaining wall aspect altogether, quickly set up a meeting with Jeff Fuller, and have
Yes.
this discussion in greater depth?
That would be my recommendation.
Is that your substitute motion?
That's my substitute motion.
Okay, so state your substitute motion.
My substitute motion was to approve everything as outlined by Commissioner Melton, except striking 3.33 and 6.17.
The retaining walls.
Yes, taking everything out to do with the retaining wall.
Well, there's 233, you gotta be careful.
Well, the top,
Oh,
anything to do with the
3.3.
retaining walls.
Yeah, anything to do with retaining walls.
And then, would you ask
wait, just
that
quit
Life
typing.
comes back in 2 weeks
Yeah,
to
yes.
discuss the other issues?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if they need, if I'd be more than happy in that discussion with Jeff to talk about that. We have a lat purser plan that was to develop that property. It's sitting out there on the books. I bet planning staff still has it, probably have that sketch still, right? And have a dialogue with him. And if he's reticent, fine, we don't do anything. But if he sees some merit in it, we can get this thing off top dead center and get where we need to be.
Okay. Do we have a second on the substitute motion?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. I keep thinking you seconded the first one.
That's okay.
Barbara did.
Can I add just one commentary, and it's not going to rock the boat too much. I'd like to encourage staff to work with the property owner, and if it's not going to work out with the property owner, come up with a plan B. I think we could do something really special and really nice looking on that side of the park, and I would really love to see that terraced, to have a place where people could sit and picnic, or like Hazen said, watch the Christmas tree lighting, or National Night Out, I think that could become the next cool little micro park over in that area if it were terraced. Y'all please work with him to figure something out.
We're not gonna let this one rest.
I know.
You hush.
I got one more thing to say.
Mr. Query.
No, Barbara's the first.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Mr. Mill?
I would just say, I'd like for John to be in that conversation with him too. And I think there's opportunities, like John said 10 minutes ago now, like deeding the right-of-way or something to the town. There may be something that could be a win-win for the property owner and the town without us having to actually purchase.
Okay. Mr. Query.
I'm going to kind of tie into what Barbara's saying, but it's a comment that I think staff needs to hear. When we talk about people's property, we shouldn't be putting their name up there or talking about it until we've talked to the property owner. But for them to come back and call me the next day and say, so y'all are thinking about taking that's not the right way for this thing to go. And that's just a point of my concern. He has also been contacted by our staff before about doing stuff over there, and then they never come back and talk to him. And it kind of puts a stick in you. Why are you talking about my property, and you're saying you're going to do something, then you don't come back and talk to me? It's a problem, and that's the same thing we went against across the street. And I know that's not what we're voting on tonight, but it's the same problem. We were talking about, our Public Works was talking about taking her property to put the sidewalk in there because they had the money for a sidewalk and they thought it should be done regardless. But the bottom line is we sat down and talked to planning, and John was involved in it and some others, and came up with a plan that didn't hurt the property and done something, and it soothed the feathers. We don't need to talk about people's property until they know we're talking about it, and that's just a...
So I got two quick comments on
Yeah.
that. So one of them is the dilemma of the staff getting out ahead of the board, right? So like this example with the retaining wall, it's, okay, we think this is pretty good idea. We're not sure how the board feels about it. So for us to jump over the board and then go to this person, and the person goes back to the board and says, well, let me tell you what your staff's talking about, right? That's going to infuriate the board. And then, and I feel like in the other situation, I do feel like C.J. O'Neill's got a very good reputation of being a good communicator, and this is my opinion.
That's my opinion too.
Okay, and that I think in sometimes the property owners take what they want to hear and then they run with it as opposed to hearing what staff has to say. So I think there's some middle ground in there, and so I mean, your overall point is for everybody to be sensitive about private property, I think is well taken. So I just would say, I think we get it. I guess
I've got to say one thing to you, though, Hasten, because I can't just let it sit. CJ was the one who talked to the lady across the street and who insinuated, in her opinion, he's going to take her property. And that should never have come about in that form.
I agree with
and
that.
it's a problem to me. And Jay, I think you talked to him at one time about some money that was coming through and maybe you could do some stuff. This was years ago. But he said nobody came back to him afterwards. Now, if you want me to document all that, I'll be glad to do it, but I don't think you really want me to do that. You
No
can ask
need.
me. Whichever you want to ask me, we'll have a meeting. Let's get over that and go on.
Okay. I believe that we have a substitute motion on the floor.
And a second.
And a second.
It's true, we've had discussion.
Had some discussion. Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item on the agenda is resolution of special assessment for Acacia Street, Cochran Woods Lane, Jerry Lane, Lightwood Drive. Do we have a motion on this particular item?
I'll make a motion that we accept the assessment resolution for Acadia Drive as detailed in C.J. O'Neill's September 4th, 2019 letter to the mayor and board of commissioners.
Okay.
Be a white flag.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Mr. Buckley, did you want to say
Just a brief
something?
comment, just so the board is well aware, this now directs the staff to proceed to do the project. Once this is adopted, then this is in stone and cannot be reversed. The next time you see this, which will be after completion of the project, then the assessment roll order, resolution, and hearing will occur on the back end, just so you know the process. But the adoption of this, we have to proceed then as staff to do this work. And that's what you wanted to do anyway, but that's,
Yeah.
just so you understand.
Thank you. I apologize. Did we get a second on that?
John?
Yes.
John did. Okay. Thank you, John. Any discussion?
Have we contacted the owners?
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is mayor's report. I don't have a report. Mr. Attorney?
No report, but I amend my comment from last time that we will not be going to SOS, so we're not going to be out of time as originally told the board beginning this next Friday. We're not going.
Oh, sorry about that. I know you missed that.
So I'll be here if you need me.
Okay. Mr. Manager?
All right, I want to apologize to the board, but I have 6 things. So, let me start with number 1. The Cultural Diversity Committee heard a presentation, it's too strong a word, but the BAPS folks came to them to talk about Diwali, and they want to do something bigger, try to bring in more of the community, and they talked to cultural diversity, and that committee's responsibility is to advise the board, and I felt like it'd be more sufficient because we knew it'd be a late meeting, and I'm the staff liaison, and so I think the Cultural Diversities Committee recommendation or advice to the board would be ask the board to ask the Cultural Diversity Committee to work with the BAPS folks to try to create more of a community event. But we didn't want to get ahead of the board, so I was looking for whatever head nods that this is something that y'all would be comfortable with the CDC working on the Diwali celebration.
What is a Diwali? How do you define?
So Diwali is a Hindu New Year's celebration.
Asian Indian, yeah, it's really fantastic in the actual India. So it's a great, great time.
So anybody have any concerns?
Is it in a park or in
My only
a?
concern would be making sure that you reconnect the dots back to Corey and his team, because so much goes on. When does it occur? Does it need staff support and things like that? Is this something that BAPS is going to handle altogether and they run with it, or are they going to need assistance? I mean, there's that dividing line between who does what.
I will certainly clarify the expectation.
Yeah, there you go.
What is the ask?
So what the Cultural Diversity Committee wants to work with the BAPS folks to create a cultural, enhance the cultural. My concern to them was do not get ahead of the board. You are advisory to the board, so my suggestion to them was let's bring your idea back to the board to make sure the board is okay with CDC working with BABS and the Diwali celebration. So what I'm hearing is everybody's okay with that.
And the concept is that they would do something like out in the town green.
Could be out in the green. I think they may want to do something inside. They may want to do it here in the lobby in there, so we kind of explore that. I do not think it's going to be something that's closing down streets or, hiring, that kind of big thing.
The celebration is indoors.
The ones we've gone to are.
The ones we've
That's
gone
right, yeah.
Could I just have a comment? When I read the notes, I worried a little bit, so I'm glad you clarified that, because their notes actually say that they approved supporting. So you coming to us and saying that they're advising that we approve it, I think is good. But I just wonder if this isn't something that should be partnering with Parks and Rec instead of just this advisory board and BAPS. That's purely a question.
Okay, we'll work on that. That's.
Again, it's keeping them out of that doer status and in an advisory role.
And I would reinforce, if I may, Mayor, that this is a very special event to BAPS. Make sure we know what the expectation is and that there's no ambiguity.
All right, the second thing is, when we made the budget presentation to you about the senior administrative assistant over at the police department, in parentheses, in part of the presentation was a victim advocacy, a victim rights advocacy person over at the police department. So really victim rights, making sure the victims of crimes are heard. The chief has thought more about this, and what he decided to do is he put together a internal memo that delegated the victim advocate role to a whole number of people. It does make sense to us. I'm comfortable with it, but we wanted to bring it back to the board's attention that the administrative assistant at the police department, which they do need, is going to do less victim advocacy. That this person, they'll still do some, but it's also going to be delegated throughout the organization. So I wanted to make sure, because in the presentation, the budget presentation, it said victim advocate among other things too. So this is going to be less victim advocacy, but it's not going to be ignored. It's just going to be delegated to other people in the organization. Okay, so I'll keep going unless somebody has questions. All right, the third thing is we are no longer negotiating with 131 East John Street for the real estate out there. We also, that's number 3. Number 4 is the painted crosswalk there at McDowell Street okay, that's my question. Do you guys like it? That is temporary paint. Do you guys like that kind of thing? And do you guys want us to do that, make it in a permanent form?
In that location, I think it looks good.
Yeah, okay. Now, do you want us to bring back the final design? I'll suggest we'll bring back the final design before we put anything on the ground. We'll bring back the final design. Thanks for bringing that up, Corey. Okay.
So is that going to be the epoxy type paint to ensure that it wears well?
Yeah.
Like we talked about last week?
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks ago?
So what I'm going to say is final design back to the board. Prior purchase.
Okay.
I'd like to make one small comment on that. It looks like the arrows indicating speed bump are professionally done. In other words, taped out or something, but the colors are rather random as opposed to straight edge.
Well, and you can see how that, yeah, that's how it was done. And that's whatever.
It's called art, Jeff.
Yeah, well, salable. So you want, Jeff, you want to see crisper lines, right?
Yeah, I think crisper lines would be better.
Okay. All right, we'll bring back final design to the board. All right, number 5 is an interesting situation. So the Board of Adjustment attorney, Charlie, as I understand it, has been with the town longer than you have. Retired. No. That's not true?
That's not true.
Okay. So the Board of Adjustment attorney retired, and we have, we're kind of like, okay, what's the next step? And the suggestion that we've come up with is asking Jay to find like 3 folks that we think could do the job for the town, and we talked to them, and we would bring back a final candidate for y'all to talk to and make a decision on. If you guys don't like to do that, we could give you 3 candidates, and you could interview all 3. It's an important role, right? You need a good attorney that understands Board of Adjustment law, and because it's a quasi-judicial situation. The question is, what's the pleasure of the board?
I guess I'd prefer to have staff interview folks and bring a recommendation back to us, and then we sit down with that individual.
I agree.
Jay and others certainly have better understanding of what the ins and outs are of the Board of Adjustments and what's required for that.
And the interview team would be Becky, Jay, and myself.
Okay.
And we'll bring back just a recommendation. Okay, so the last thing is...
Is that okay with everybody?
Okay. So the last thing is I'm going to be a little bit, I learned from the county today that there is a company in town that employs 50 people. They could not, they were looking for 100,000 square feet. They could not find it in Matthews warehouse space. So they were considering going to South Carolina and, or somewhere else in Mecklenburg County. Mecklenburg County apparently threw some incentives to them, and they're going to move to a neighboring town, and they're going to add about 21 people, so they're going to end up with 71 employees. But they found a 100,000 square foot building, and it's a retail division that's being spun out, but it hasn't been publicly announced. So,
So they staying in Matthews or going to South?
no, they're not going to South Carolina, but they're not staying in Matthews. I'm sorry, that was the intention of my update. And as we publicly hear the company, we will let the board know.
Did they talk to Economic Development Advisory?
So they did not, they talked to me, they looked in town, they just can't find a 100,000 square foot warehouse.
That's a warehouse the size of a Lowe's store, pretty big.
Yeah. So that's all I got.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Do we have a motion to adjourn? I'll make the motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Motion fails.
We're going to sit here until second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
No, I got Bob White. I've been here.
Like to meet with those two people that
You were here.
first place.
I've been here for almost 10 years, and we needed it because of cases.
I'm good. I'm good.
That's sure. I couldn't represent both sides. So I got Bob sitting on that.
Wood boxes on our side.
But he was officially hired by the town in like 91.
What was he trying to get from the state?
Something about
You think this will work designation?
this has something to do with parking property, and I think it was of this wall of that town somewhere. Walkway or something that he was trying to get. What do you call it, John?
Greenway?
When you get to make mistakes.
I was hoping to be able to see him
Grant?
tonight.
Grant.
Okay.
And I don't think
No.
that came through. But the thing was, he said nobody.
His mom would get mad at me if I do that.
So I went back and told him. He said, well, it looks like a town. They asked me back to start with, come back and told me. They didn't get it, but he knows that.
Well,
Barbara, you
Jay.
did talk to Hunter about it?
It's not bad, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And that one.
Well, and I know,
But the one across the
He
street
went
now.
flying somewhere tonight. I don't know where he went.
And I'm glad to let her